This is the scariest thing that ever happened to me, and I still get chills when I think about it. I was only 12 years old at the time, in the summer of 2011, and I was looking forward to spending the day with my siblings. I have an older sister and an older brother, and I'm the youngest of the three. Our parents worked every day except Sundays, so we had to entertain ourselves most of the time. We lived in a row house in Philly, in a neighborhood that was not too bad but not too good either. In the 20 years that we lived there, only 3 weird things happened, and this was one of them. We were getting ready to go to the park, which was just a 5-minute walk from our house, when we heard a knock on the door. Our parents had always warned us not to open the door to strangers and to check the cameras first. We tiptoed to the living room, trying not to make any sound, and looked at the screen that showed the front door. We saw our old neighbor who lived next door to us. He was about 55 years old, and he had a very creepy habit of only going out at night. One night, when we came back from a wedding party, we saw him dragging some heavy black trash bags out of his house. He saw us and quickly threw them in the dumpster, then ran back inside and locked his door. We were freaked out and wondered what was in those bags. We never saw him during the day, until now. He was knocking on our door, and we were shocked to see him. As we watched him, my brother noticed that he had something in his left hand. He waited for him to turn around, and then we saw it. He was holding a pair of kitchen scissors. We couldn't see them before because he was hiding them behind his back. He must have thought that we were not home, because he turned around and walked back to his house. My sister and brother were terrified, and they told me to stay very quiet. My sister called the police on her cell phone, whispering so that he wouldn't hear us through the thin walls. She told them what was going on, and they said they would be there in 5 minutes. We heard another knock on the door, and we checked the cameras again. It was 4 police officers, 2 at our door and 2 at his. We opened the door and let the 2 officers in, who asked us if we were okay. We heard the other 2 officers banging on his door, shouting, "Police, open up with your hands in the air." We couldn't see what happened, but we could hear it. We heard his door open and the officers telling him that he was under arrest. They handcuffed him and took him to the police car. The 2 officers that were with us went with one of the other officers to search his house for any evidence. My siblings and I followed them to the door, and we saw them bringing out 6 large trash bags that smelled like rotten meat and blood. There was blood dripping from the bottom of the bags. We called our parents and they rushed home from work to see what was going on. I don't remember much after that, but when I was 16, my parents told me what was in those bags. They were human body parts. I was horrified and speechless. If we had opened that door, we could have been his next victims. Now we know why he only came out at night, why he was afraid of us, and why he was so silent. Now, whenever I hear a knock, I always check my cameras. I've always loved being a scout. Ever since I was a kid, I enjoyed exploring the outdoors with my friends and learning new skills. But nothing prepared me for the horror I experienced a few years ago, when I was on a camping trip with 2 girls, Jashi and Pariat. We were the oldest scouts in our group, and our leader trusted us to go into the woods and find some sticks for making spears. It sounded like a fun challenge, so we grabbed our knives and headed into the forest. We made sure to walk in a straight line and to memorize the landmarks along the way so we could find our way back easily. But after 20 minutes of searching, we still couldn't find any suitable sticks. We decided to turn back before it got too dark. That's when we realized something was terribly wrong. The forest had changed. The trees had grown closer together, blocking our path. It was like they had moved on their own to trap us inside. We looked around, but everything looked the same. We couldn't tell which way we had come from. We were lost. We started to panic. We shouted for help, hoping someone would hear us, but no one answered. The only sound was the rustling of the leaves and the cawing of the crows. We felt a cold breeze on our necks, as if someone was watching us. We felt a sudden urge to run, to get away from this nightmare. We ran in the direction we thought was right, but we only got deeper into the forest. We stumbled upon a concrete path that cut through the trees like a scar. It looked like an old road, but it was too narrow for a car. We wondered who had built it and where it led to. We thought maybe it could lead us to safety, but we also felt a strange dread about it. It seemed to go in the opposite direction of our campsite. It seemed to go deeper into the darkness. We didn't know what to do. Should we follow the path or stay in the forest? We had to make a choice, and fast, because we had a feeling that something was coming for us, something evil. We crossed the concrete path, hoping to find a way out of the forest, but the other side was just more trees, more darkness, more silence. Except for one thing. There was an small old building standing in a clearing. It looked like it had been abandoned for years. The windows were broken, the door was hanging from its hinges, and the roof was covered with moss. We wondered who had lived there and what had happened to them. We decided to avoid the building and keep walking. Maybe we could find a road or a sign or something that could help us. We walked for what seemed like an eternity, but we only got more lost. We started to lose hope. Then we saw her. A woman wearing a pink and green coat. She looked like she was out for a hike. She looked so normal, so happy. We ran towards her, screaming for help. We begged her to tell us where our campsite was, how to get back to our friends, how to escape this hell. She looked at us with a puzzled expression. She said she had never seen us before, but she knew of another campsite nearby. She pointed to a direction and told us to follow the road. She said we would be safe there. We thanked her and followed her advice. We ran along the road hoping to see our campsite soon, but as we ran, we noticed something strange. The road was not a normal road. It was made of bones, human bones, skulls, ribs, spines, limbs. They were all piled up, forming a macabre pavement. We felt terrified. We wondered who they were and what had happened to them. We finally reached our campsite. We were so relieved to see our tents, our leader, our friends. We ran towards them, crying and apologizing. We told them we had been lost for hours, that we had seen horrible things, that we had met a strange woman. Our leader looked at us with a confused expression. He said we had only been gone for 25 minutes and that our free time was still going on. He said we must have had a bad dream or a prank gone wrong. He said we should calm down and join the others. We couldn't believe it. How could it be possible? How could we have been gone for hours when it was only minutes? How could we have seen things that were not there? How could we have met a woman who was not real? We looked at our watches and our phones. They all showed the same time. The time we had left the campsite, the time we had entered the forest, the time we had entered the time vortex. We realized then that we had not escaped. We had not returned. We were still in the forest. We were still in the nightmare. And the woman in the pink and green coat, she was not our savior. She was our doom. She was the one who had lured us into the trap. She was the one who had fed us to the forest. We looked around and saw that our campsite was not our campsite. It was a replica made of bones. Our tents, our leader, our friends. They were all bones. Bones that looked like us. We screamed. We screamed until we had no voice. We screamed until we had no time. We screamed until we were bones. It was a dark and stormy night. I was in my room, immersed in a video game, blasting away zombies and aliens with my headphones on. The sound effects were so loud that I barely noticed the faint, huge noise coming from downstairs. I paused the game and took off my headphones. I strained my ears to listen, but there was only silence. I shrugged and resumed playing, thinking it was just the wind or something. An hour later, the noise returned, louder and more persistent. This time, I couldn't ignore it. It sounded like someone was banging on the basement door. I felt a surge of fear and curiosity. Who or what could it be? I decided to check it out, hoping it was just a prank or a stray animal. I grabbed a flashlight and a baseball bat and headed downstairs. As I approached the basement door, I felt a chill in the air. I opened the door and was greeted by a blast of cold wind. I shivered and looked around. The basement window was wide open, letting in the rain and the thunder. I was shocked. I was sure I had locked all the windows before going to bed. How did this happen? I stepped into the basement, shining my flashlight around. Everything looked normal, except for the window. I walked towards it, intending to close it and get out of there. But as I passed by the closet, something caught my eye. The closet door was slightly ajar, revealing a sliver of darkness inside. I stopped and stared at it. I had a bad feeling about it. I had never opened that closet before. It was full of old junk and cobwebs. What if there was something hiding in there? I debated with myself whether I should open the closet or not. Part of me wanted to know what was inside, and part of me wanted to run away. I took a deep breath and moved closer to the closet. I reached for the doorknob, ready to face whatever was in there, but before I could touch it, I heard a horrible sound. It was a low, raspy voice coming from inside the closet. It said one word, "Hello?" I screamed and dropped the flashlight and the bat. I turned around and ran for the stairs as fast as I could. I didn't look back. I didn't want to see what was in the closet. I just wanted to get out of there and never go back. I slammed the door behind me and locked it. I was trembling and sweating. I grabbed my phone and dialed 911. I told them there was an intruder in my basement and that I needed help. They said they would send a patrol car right away. I thanked them and hung up. I hoped they would arrive soon. I waited in my room, clutching the bat. I could still hear the voice in my head. "Hello?" It sounded so creepy and sinister. Who was that man? What did he want from me? How long had he been hiding in my closet? I tried not to think about it. I just prayed that the cops would get here and save me. After what seemed like an eternity, I heard sirens outside. I looked out the window and saw 2 police cars parked in front of my house. I felt a wave of relief. I ran downstairs to open the door for them. I saw 2 officers get out of their cars and approach me. They asked me if I was okay and where the intruder was. I told them he was in the basement closet and that he had a gun. They nodded and told me to stay back. They drew their weapons and entered the house. I followed them at a safe distance. I watched as they cautiously went down the basement stairs. I heard them shout, "Police! Come out with your hands up!" There was no response. They repeated their command. Still nothing. They moved closer to the closet. I held my breath. Suddenly, I heard a loud bang. It was a gunshot. I screamed and ducked. I heard another bang, then silence. I didn't know what was going on. I was terrified. Had the intruder shot the cops? Had the cops shot the intruder? Were they all dead? I didn't dare to look. A few minutes later, I heard footsteps coming up the stairs. I looked up and saw the 2 officers. They were alive. They had blood on their uniforms, but they seemed okay. They were dragging a man behind them. He was handcuffed and had a bandage on his leg. He looked dirty and crazy. He was the intruder. They brought him outside and threw him in the back of one of the cars. They came back to me and explained what had happened. They said they had opened the closet door and the man had fired at them. He had missed them, but they had shot him in the leg. They had disarmed him and arrested him. They said he was a wanted criminal who had escaped from a mental hospital. He had been breaking into houses and hiding in closets. He had a history of violence. He was very dangerous. They asked me if I was hurt or needed medical attention. I said no. I was fine. They said they were sorry for what I had gone through and that they would take care of everything. They said I was lucky to be alive. They said I had done the right thing by calling them and not opening the closet. They said if I had opened the closet, the man would have killed me.